Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to the October 12th, 2021 Select Board meeting. This evening, I will be participating remotely, and all our votes must be taken by roll call. So I would like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody could stand.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we will start the meeting with any public comment.
All set, Laura.
All set? Okay, great. Thank you. We will move on to our first new business, and our town clerk, Dawn Warren, will be giving us some information regarding our voting precinct changes due to the 2020 census.
Hi, Dawn.
Hey, Dawn.
My name is Dawn Warren. I'm the town clerk, and I'm here to speak tonight about re-precincting from the 2020 census and what that means for our North Andover residents. Secretary Galvin's office released North Andover's official 2020 U.S. Census numbers, along with the precinct map and a recommendation to remain at 8 precincts. Earlier population estimates had North Andover increasing to 9 precincts, but the actual number came in lower than expected. With the 8.3 increase in population, boundary lines shift in all precincts, although marginally. The total number of residents moving from one precinct to another is 620. In 2030, it's likely that we'll go to 9 precincts based on the 2020 population numbers, as the limit per precinct is 4,000 residents. If the town should vote to make changes to the map that was supplied by the state, our municipality would be responsible for creating an official map along with any other required materials. I have no update on the board with respect to the drawing of congressional and legislative districts at this time. However, this morning I received a call from Senator Brownsberger's office. He's the co-chair of the Joint Committee on Redistricting, and have been invited to a meeting with their office later this week. I'd like to talk a little bit about future planning and what we know for known development sites. Royal Crest has not submitted an application to the Planning Board. As currently proposed, the redevelopment project would require a zoning amendment, therefore would be required to go to town meeting for approval. If the project were to be approved to move forward, the developer said that there's an 8 to 10 year development plan, and Royal Crest is in Precinct 5. Avalon's estimated population increase is about 284 people, and Minco, their estimated population increase is 203 people, and both of those projects are in Precinct 1. Now we want to talk a tiny bit about voters per precinct and voter turnout percentages, so we can see what an average turnout would be on election day and how those districts might affect an election day process. So the annual town election turnout for the last 4 years was below 20%. And the state and federal November election turnouts averaged to be 78% for the last 3 election cycles. But approximately half of those voters are voting early. And as you know, we've got a bill that's being debated now that will permanently change mail-in voting, so we want to take that into consideration as well. So in closing, the changes in precincts would go into effect on December 31st, 2021, and those residents that are affected will be notified by mail. Myself and the Board of Registrars recommend adopting the changes submitted by Secretary Galvin's office. This is cost effective and will cause less confusion at the polls. I want to also make note the population numbers are allowed to shift over 4,000 during the next 10 years. If the Select Board would be ready to vote to adopt the map and the required paperwork, a certified vote will be submitted to the Local Election District Review Commission for further review and approval. Our office will communicate with senators and representatives to make sure they know our precinct boundaries are set and that they should be used for any redistricting. At this time, I welcome any questions from the board.
Donnie, I have a question.
Sure.
Madam Chair, if I could. So on slide 2, the population changes from 2010 to 2020. So this is just showing the increases in the different precincts, right?
That is correct.
So this is not really showing what the proposed changes are,
Right, but so the proposed changes was harder to calculate because the map sizes were different. So I have the numbers, but I can't really see the streets changing because when I did the overlay, they were different sizes and it was difficult for me to determine that information. But I can tell you what the number is in each precinct that's moving.
So it looks like currently, in 2020, the numbers are pretty close in all the precincts. I mean, it just sub 4,000 for each of them. But,
Yeah, so
but like you said, with the increase in the 2 developments in precinct 1, it's going to push us over the 4,000.
And that's okay.
That's
Correct.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You were going to say something.
I'm sorry?
I think I interrupted you. You were going to say
No,
something.
not at all. I have the level, if you were interested to know, what that shift looks like per precinct. So if from precinct 2 to precinct 1, it's 64 residents. From precinct 3 into 2, it's 117 residents. Precinct 4 to precinct 5 is 137 residents. Precinct 6 into precinct 8 is 187 residents. And precinct 7 into precinct 5 is 115. And that's the total of the 620 residents total that will need to shift in the plan as it stands now.
Can I just ask one quick?
Of course.
You were talking actual residents, individual voters, not households, right?
No,
Just for,
it's residents and it's not voters.
it's, okay, got it.
So, a question if I,
Right, that makes sense.
Because you're moving the entire
Yeah.
house, if you will.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, to be honest, it's a combination,
So
really.
it may not be that many households, like.
Correct.
Because it's actually, okay, got it.
well, sort of to that, so how do you decide what street?
So the state, is really the expert at this, and so they did the census block changes and then submitted them to our office, taking into consideration all of those things as they are creating the lines. And what we did was drove those precinct lines. The assistant town clerk and I went out and drove the lines and the boundaries, during that process, which was actually really fun. And if I might thank both of Patty Siffelin, and Suzanne Pellich for their help, we really enjoyed the process. But back to your question. So the information that came from the state, they take into consideration both packing and fragmenting of voters. And so they provided us with a list of the census blocks, and those are broken down by population.
So if I'm to understand it right.
Yep.
The state basically creates a template or recommendation.
They did.
And then, but ultimately, it's still our choice with your guidance as to how that falls.
Yes, that is
Okay.
absolutely correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, is there any, I think you touched upon it, but is there any consideration given to anticipation of people moving into, like, or is it, how much do we rely on that, and where are we getting that information?
Sure. So the information that draws the boundary lines was from what was collected in the 2020 census. So that's the official number that we have to go on. When they were creating the estimates at the time, they were asking for our input. What do you have coming? But ultimately, the number is what it is. It is the finite number, and that's what draws those lines. Like I said, if we were to create a 9th precinct and move thousands of residents around at this point, we could, but I don't recommend that at this point, being that we've got this 10 years now that we can then, do it when we know what that population number is going to look like. Right now we know of two developments, and that's approximately 450, I think, people or so. So, if we knew Royal Crest, I might have had a different recommendation for the board at this point, but we don't.
But even that was Royal Crest when they,
We have the number of those actual people living there right now,
Right.
too,
not
so,
anticipated to be many more, so it might not be a big shift at all.
exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Good, I'm glad.
Dawn, I just have one quick question for you.
It's hard for me to hear you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
My quick question is just because we all vote at the high school, the shift isn't too impactful for our residents, right? Because everybody shows up to the same spot.
Yeah, I mean, when you go from 8 to 9 precincts, that does move thousands of people. It can be impactful if you're showing up in the wrong line, and we need to, put you in the right line. But 620 is certainly more reasonable to handle at this point in time.
Okay.
But
Great, thank you.
you are correct. Still one polling location. Even with 9, we would be at one polling location.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions from the board?
And when would this take effect?
December 31st
So,
of this year.
okay.
Well, I think you did a very nice job. It's comprehensive. The only thing that's difficult, as you said, and it's just, I think the way the town is laid out, is it's really hard to read the little streets, and no matter how big you press the enlarge and put your glasses on. But again, we're a pretty big as far as land mass, so it makes it difficult to make it grow. You grow right off the screen, so.
We'll be
But-
sure to push, some social media channels when the time comes, as well as the requirement by state law to mail those changes to folks. So we'll be sure to make sure that it's, in the newsletter and wherever else it needs to be, so that people are aware of their change.
And maybe a listing by streets.
Certainly,
And street
that's a great
numbers.
idea. We will do that.
Okay.
Thank you, Dawn, for all your hard work on this and for your office.
It was my
We really
pleasure.
appreciate it. If there's no other questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the 2020 re-precincting.
Move that the select board approve the 2020 redistricting plan as presented.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second, and we'll take a roll call vote.
Janice Phillips, aye.
Chris Nobley, aye.
Rosemary Smedili, aye.
Richard Valencourt, aye.
Laura Bates, aye. Passes 5-0. Thank you again, John, so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
you,
Don.
Dawn.
Thanks, Tom.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Well, What a year to start as clerk, huh? Big
Right.
election,
Oh, but she-
redistricting, all of
She's
it.
doing a
I
great
know,
job.
but boy, she's a trooper.
All right, we'll move on to the approval of our fiscal year 2023 budget calendar. Melissa, are you going to go through that a little bit?
Yep,
you
hard to
want me-
believe that it's already that time again. But here we are doing our 23 budget calendar.
When we have a late town meeting, it really creeps up on you.
It really does. It feels like it didn't end. But we are already working on the capital improvement plans. Those are being done by the departments right now. We are be doing our revenue and fixed cost committee soon enough. And this is the document that we will dictate the entire process with. So we appreciate you presenting this and approving it tonight.
Are there any questions from the board?
Oh, So the next step is to approve the budget policy statement on the 25th.
Yes.
We'll look forward to that. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I missed capital improvement plan requests. Oh, they were kind of
Budget
flip-flopped.
calendar. So move that the select board approve the FY '23 budget calendar as presented.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. I'll take a roll call vote.
Janice Phillips, aye.
Chris Nobley, aye.
Rosemary Smedili, aye.
Richard Valencourt, aye.
And the chair votes aye. It passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, and for our next new business, we'll vote on to declare that school crossing guards as special municipal employees. It sounds like we missed them in the last list, that they work in 2 positions, correct?
They've been asked to be added. Some of the school crossing guards also work in the lunchroom as staff, and so
Okay.
receive 2 pays.
there any discussion?
Yeah, I'm sorry, what will this do for them?
A special municipal employee is allowed to have 2 occupations within the town as long as they are part-time in each of those jobs, or it allows someone to serve on 2 different committees.
Okay.
If there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion to pass this.
I move that the select board declare school crossing guards as special municipal employees.
Second?
I have a motion and a second, and I'll take a roll call vote.
Janice Phillips, aye.
Chris Nobley, aye.
Rosemary Smedili, aye.
Richard Valencourt, aye.
And the chair votes aye. It passes 5-0. And, all right, so we'll move on to our fiscal year 2023 goals and assignments. Has everybody had a chance to look at this?
We did a pretty good job, Madam Chair. So 4 people have 4. Selectwoman Phillips has 5, and Selectwoman Smedili has 3. I will say that Selectwoman Smedili's 3 are actually very involved. One is the pilots, the other one is 40B. So it may make sense for her to just keep 3, because if you remember correctly, Selectwoman Phillips did end up with water and sidewalks. So hers might not be as hefty, but I think Selectwoman Smedili's are going to involve a lot of work this year. She also has the study of the police and fire department staffing. And so I think those will all be things that we'll really be getting into this year. So.
But Janice, if you run into trouble and you need someone to back you up, I could fill in for you. So I'm more than happy to do that and report on your behalf, so for the board. So
Thank you.
just you got to let me know.
Other than that, we were pretty even. I was pretty proud of us.
It worked out well.
Yep.
Does anybody have any other comments?
Excited to jump in?
No.
Let's
Yeah.
make it
Yeah.
happen.
Get working, right? Then I will entertain a motion to accept these goals and assignments.
Move that the select board accept the FY '23 goals and liaison assignments as presented.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. I will take a full vote.
Janice Phillips, aye.
Chris Nobley, aye.
Rosemary Smedili, aye.
Richard Valencourt, aye.
And the chair votes aye. That passes 5-0. Great. Let's get to work. And I think I'm going to pass this over to Madam Town Manager to talk about the airport fly zone for our last new business item.
Get it to okay. So over the last couple of weeks, particularly when I had my office hours, I started to get some different calls and concerns about the airport noise. And I was able to go and meet with the airport director, Mike Miller, and Andrew Shapiro came with us. And it was a great meeting, and we reviewed a lot of different data, and I learned a little bit about the history of the airport. And so the airport, about 20 years ago, actually did an analysis and a study of their traffic, and had recommendations in a committee who came in and dictated where they thought the plane should fly, et cetera. And that's the last time they really looked at this. So we had over the last probably 6 to 8 weeks, 3 separate residents call and just express concern about increased airplane noise. When I asked the airport about how that gets reported to them, they don't really have a mechanism where they track the complaints that come in. I, in the past, was used to Logan, where they had like quarterly reports they would send me, and they're like, we got 947 complaints from the city. They don't do that there. But what they do is they track the calls. So the complaints we've really been getting about have been about the stop and touch and go planes. And the touch and go planes basically are training planes. And I don't want to say they're doing tricks, but they're kind of doing tricks, right, in the sky above where the houses are. And they have to do a certain amount of flying during the day and a certain amount of flying at night. And as we know, more people are home than usual, right? So if you look at this sheet that I have up here, the local numbers here are the numbers that fall underneath the touch and go planes. So you can see that, you know, over the last maybe 5-year period, the numbers were actually much lower than they had been in the beginning of the decade. So 2000, 2001, 2002, we were really looking at more like 54,000, 42,000, and then they really had dropped down around the 2015 period. And then all of a sudden, in 2020, they popped back up. So you can see how if you're a resident at home who's been kind of used to these 18,000, 17,000, 15,000, to suddenly have 10,000 more flights over you could be problematic. And then
he also was kind enough to give me the data for year to date. And you can see that they, just since January, have already had 22,000. So they're going to well surpass where they were last year and probably look back to be more around where they were in the beginning of the 2000s. So things certainly have changed. The residents that we've heard from have been really bothered by this increased noise, and so I thought it was an important conversation for us to have to try to problem solve with them and with the airport. And there was two things that I was thinking that we could kind of start with that might be kind of a good way for us to at least start to consider what problems there may be. And I'm not sure if there really is or there isn't, right? But I have heard the videos, I have gone out to some of their homes, and I know that if, you know, it was you and you're sitting there, you can hear it, and it's troublesome. So the two things that I was thinking was, one, that we could perhaps formally request that the airport start to track the complaints, so we know what they're actually getting. You know, if we're only getting 3 in 6 to 8 weeks, I'm imagining that they're probably getting more than that, and if we ask them to create a mechanism to track those so that they could report to us, I think it would be helpful. The other thing that I think we should explore is regulating the touch-and-go planes. So looking at some of our surrounding airports like Beverly, some of them don't allow the touch-and-go service at all. I understand the touch-and-go service is important to this airport and for its success, but perhaps we could have hours by bylaw, right, where the touch-and-go service could fly, you know, not past 7 p.m. or not past 8 p.m. in the summer, so they could get those dark hours in. I think there must be some compromises that we come up with working with the airport. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, let you know that was something I was going to begin, and see if you thought that was a reasonable course of action.
How many schools are there now? And, well, there's a helicopter school, there's also Eagle East, and is there one more?
I don't know how many training facilities they have here. They have quite a few training facilities now, though.
They do?
Most of their, so they were explaining to me that most of their hangars are leased, and that they have renters, basically, that rent them out and run the schools through their facility. They're doing a great business there. I mean, it's really impressive. It's so clean. Yeah.
You know, one thing I would be concerned with is that if you start limiting their hours, then they're going to try to start getting more of these touch and goes in the shortened hours, which is going to increase the volume of traffic. So you would hate to see that, because that could be a risky thing to have, you know, all
Have
of a sudden-
congestion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it would have
that's
this
a really
congestion.
good point, Vicki.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's something we really have to, we're going to have to really study and be thoughtful. I mean, I said to them, it's been 20 years since they've formed a committee. Maybe it's time to form a committee again. Our population, as we now know, has certainly changed in the last 10 years,
But if
20
you
years.
go back to your historic slide, I mean, the numbers were so much higher
They were.
years back. I mean, it was like twice in time. I saw 49,000, 60,000. I mean, look at those numbers. You know, that. So we're actually way below what, you know, some of the peak numbers were in the early 2000s.
One thing that, go ahead, I'm
No,
sorry.
I'm sorry. I just question is I don't see, does the civil include helicopter traffic?
The
And
civil
like the
Would
state
include
police
regular,
and
regular
the
civil, military does not include state police.
state police or the, what was the other
The
one?
DEA.
DEA, so those aren't on there? Those
I
are
don't think
more
so.
top secret, yeah.
And I know Mr. Miller would be happy to come here and speak to us as well. He's been very helpful, and could probably answer many more of your questions than I could.
One thing that we did do years ago, and Donnie would remember that, we did change the flight pattern and tried to get more of the flights over a less populated area. And I wonder if it's changed again, and maybe that's something we need to go back to if it's not being done right now. So that, you know, they made a real attempt not to fly over neighborhoods and take to a different pattern. So I think we should really take a good look at that, because that, I'm sure Donnie, I'm sure you remember that, and that did seem to make a difference.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think, you know, maybe looking at it again, just looking at the population, has the demographic changed, right? It may have over the last 20 years. There may be more houses in one area than there was before. I don't know the answer to that, but you know.
The other thing too, at that time, the aircraft was older and it was absolutely noisier. It has gotten better in that regard. I mean, it was really noisy, and it would start on Sunday mornings, and but that I think has gotten better because, you know, the aircraft gets old and you really shouldn't be using it anymore unless it's unbelievably well maintained. But I think Selectman Valancourt made a point too, that if DEA and state police and their training exercises, that's going to and that's going to increase the noise as well. But I think the big secret is maybe checking into the flight patterns, because that might at least, help. And maybe, as you said, some hours too, but,
Would we consider asking their board to recreate a committee to look at this again? I mean, I think that could be a fair request that the town could make.
Yeah, I mean, it's, to me, it kind of all fits into the master plan sort of thing, right? We've reevaluating kind of our town needs and economics, right? We've got a facilities master plan. I think it could kind of fall under the same sort of concept, which is let's revisit it and put a little bit of onus on them to say, listen, you want to be like a developer or a large property, you want to be a good neighbor. So tell us how you, and these are professionals, so they deal, as you say, with other airports, other locations. So put a little bit on them and say, help us continue to be a good neighbor. And maybe there's some things that we could do as a community to make it easier for them. I don't know, right? So I think, and maybe there's somebody from within the community who could be a good liaison to that group. I mean, there's got to be somebody that's a real pilot or an expert. So maybe that's something you could
No, I think that's a great idea. They've been very receptive to working with us, so I think asking them to revisit the analysis may be helpful.
Everything, changes over time. It's been a long time. They're a huge asset to our community. We are so fortunate to have the Angel flights coming and going from there, the med flights, really important part of our community. And I think, it sounds like they'd be really open to working together. I think we should pursue that for sure.
I will say, though, that this has been discussed in the past, and I am really not a supporter of it, is expanding the length of the runway, because that will bring in bigger planes, more jets, and that's been discussed in the past, and that can get a little bit strong. But I think expanding that runway would not be a good idea, and I believe that the expansion would involve some North Andover land, if my memory serves me right. So I really want to just keep our eye on that as well.
Plus, that would kind of be contrary to what is being discussed here. That would probably open up more aviation, right, if we would expand the runway. Like
Absolutely. Absolutely, and it's bigger aircraft, so it's noisier, and next thing you know, it could be small cargo or whatever. So I just want to make note of that we keep that in mind.
I mean, I'll try to keep an open mind, but to me, these businesses up there are thriving. They're doing well. They're training pilots. They're doing a great job training pilots. We have Angel flights going in and out. We have, helicopter services, and I would be very reluctant to try to stymie any of those businesses in any way. I think they are, like I said, they're thriving and they're doing well, and they're providing a great service to this area, not just to this town, but to the area. Training pilots, Angel flight, med flights, so many great things coming out of that airport, and commerce and everything else. They're selling fuel up there, and they're doing a lot of work. So it would have to be a very compelling argument to get me to vote to try to do anything to prevent that commerce from continuing up there.
We're also collecting taxes from all of those renters,
Yep.
which is, important as well.
But that's why I don't disagree with you, but that's why I think too, it's the flight patterns, the times, that I think if we can put that all together, we probably can smooth a lot of this over.
Yes. There might be a neat solution. It's up to the chair.
I'm sorry, if someone would like to give a public comment, that's, sure.
There's only one person in the room, so I guess we know who that's going to come from.
It's hard for me to see.
2 Prospect Street.
You need to pull the microphone up, Donnie.
I live on Prospect Street, and I've been there for 60 years, okay? I don't even hear the planes no more. I've been there so long. The people who are calling and making complaints, how many years have they lived there? They've moved into an area where they knew was an airport. I don't see any change at all with the noise in that area. I mean, there's trains, there's everything else, there's motorcycles, but those are the sounds of the night you hear. You sleep with those sounds, so I don't see, the board has a lot of work to do, other than trying to solve a problem that I don't think really exists that much. It's going to happen. It's a way of doing business, but it's up to you. That's just the two comments I have. Thank you.
I think you're right, Donnie. It's definitely, it was bad a long time ago, but again, a lot of that had to do, I think, with the aircraft, that it was older aircraft and it was noisier. It is a lot better now than quite a few years ago. At least that's my impression. But again, any tweaking we can do to, the flight patterns and things like that, that would certainly be helpful, so.
So the woman that's been coming in the most has lived in, her family built the home in 1957, and she's lived there since then. She did send me, and I don't know if you guys can hear this or not. Let's see. I'll try. So she's been sending me videos and, all different, probably on my phone too, maybe easier to play it there, but let me see if I can get this to play so you get an idea. See if it... She says it starts around 6:30 in the morning and ends around 10 p.m.
And how many per day, would you say?
Let's see if she says how many she has a day. She said basically says she thinks it's most of the day, and that the most problematic part is definitely the touch and go propeller planes, which is what makes that noise, that propeller noise. And she has reached out to Seth Moulton's office and et cetera. And obviously, every resident that calls or every complaint is valid, and we explore it and try to do what we can to mitigate. But it was interesting, and Laurie and I were kind of talking about this, that, since I'd been here, I hadn't gotten any complaints at all about airplane noise, and then 3 over a 68-week period is a lot when we hadn't received anything. So.
Oh, you have.
Yeah. She's on Bradford, right?
Yeah.
Right.
No, I believe me, years ago, it was bad. But then they did do they changed the flight patterns, and that made a big difference. And I think also, too, the newer aircraft is just not as noisy. It's definitely better than it was years ago. There's no question about it. So it just could involve some minor tweaking, and
It doesn't hurt to ask, right?
It doesn't
See if
hurt
there's
to
anything
ask.
we can do.
It's possible if they look back, maybe they didn't used to go till 10 p.m. and
Right.
maybe, think over time, people kind of lose track
Yeah.
of what was happening, and maybe we, ask them to take a look back at
well, it's also,
what they
some
were
people
doing,
could
and
have
if it
taken,
has changed.
Right.
some people with COVID could have taken up flying lessons as well, and that could be increasing the numbers, which you would think if they're out of work, they wouldn't be paying for flying lessons, but if they're working at home, they could squeak a lesson in, an hour lesson in here and there, but I don't know.
Okay, so my marching order is that basically we're going to reach out to the airport. We're going to ask them to start tracking the complaints, so we at least have a kind of an idea, and then see if there's anything they would be willing to do to work with us on kind of reevaluating the analysis they did 20 years ago, to see if there's been any changes in population that would require the flight patterns to be changed. On it. Okay. Thank you for your feedback. I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure I was moving in the right direction.
Thank you, Madam Town Manager, for all your work on that. I know it's hard. We have responsibilities to the residents and to our businesses and to the airport, so it's good that we respond to everybody and try to be good neighbors to each other. I will take a motion to move into licensing.
So moved?
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Janice Phillips, aye.
Chris Nobley, aye.
Rosemary Smedili, aye.
Richard Valencourt, aye.
And the chair votes aye. We are now in licensing. Over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And we only have one item tonight. The second application has been withdrawn for the moment, but so we just have an application of Tricia Dunphy of Small Act Farms for 2 one-day wine and malt liquor licenses for fall festivals on October 23rd and 24th of this year from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and a waiver of the police detail, again, police detail for this part of it. And we've got a full sign-off in our packet from all the departments indicating no issues. Any comments or thoughts from select board members?
There hasn't been any issues with what we've given them, what we've approved so far, right? So,
Okay,
perfect.
good.
Sounds like a fun fall weekend. to that.
Yes.
Let's hope the weather keeps going in the right direction, right?
I went last weekend. It was nice and it was quiet.
Yeah.
Yep, so, no problems. Yep.
Good. All right, well, I'll hear a motion to put this to bed.
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of the 2 one-day wine and malt licenses for the Fall Festival on October 23rd and 24th at Small Act Farms from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and to waive the police detail for those hours.
And I will second all of that, including the waiving of the detail.
Thank you. And we'll do a roll call vote.
Janice Phillips, aye.
Chris Nobley, aye.
Rosemary Smedili, aye.
Richard Valencourt, aye.
Laura Bates, aye.
Great, 5-0, all set. So we hope to see as many folks there as can make it. And now just need a motion to move out of licensing, please.
Mr. Chair, I motion that we move out of licensing.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All right, second. And roll call, please.
Janice Phillips, aye.
Chris Nobley, aye.
Rosemary Smedili, aye.
Richard Valencourt, aye.
Laura Bates, aye. Excellent. That was a quick licensing.
For a change.
So we will, for a change. We will move on to our consent items. We are accepting a donation in the amount of $200 from Phyllis Loubier to the Senior Center for van service that she received while her husband was in hospice, and we appreciate that donation very much. We will be surplusing benches at the middle school fields, and we are going to accept the winter snow emergency regulations, which is the same that we accept year to year. I believe there's no changes to that. Correct, Tom? No changes. And it will go into effect December 1st, 2021, and will be lifted March 15th, 2022, unless we need to extend it. So if there isn't any discussion, I'll take a motion to accept the consent items.
I move that the select board approve and accept all consent items.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. I'll take a roll call vote.
Janice Phillips, aye.
Chris Nobley, aye.
Rosemary Smedili, aye.
Richard Valencourt, aye.
And the chair votes aye. Passes 5-0. Thank you. We will move on to the approval of our minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look at them from September 27th, 2021?
Yes.
Any questions or changes or? If nothing, then I will take a motion.
I move that the select board approve the open session minutes of September 27th, 2021 as written.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second, and I'll take a roll call vote.
Janice Phillips, aye.
Chris Nobley, aye.
Rosemary Smedili, aye.
Richard Valencourt, aye.
And the chair votes aye. Passes 5-0. We don't have any old business tonight, so we will move on to the town manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my first item is an update on the Facilities Master Plan 2. So as you know, on September 23rd, the school committee voted to send a proposal or recommendation to the town manager to go with what they were calling at the time option 1A for Facilities Master Plan 2. Option 1A includes a renovation in addition to Atkinson and Franklin, a new elementary school on the Kittredge site, a renovation in addition to the middle school. They would be maintaining their current grade configuration, meaning that kindergarten would still be at the ABCC, 1 through 5 would still be in the elementary, 6 through 8 would still be at the middle school, and 9 through 12 would be at the high school. They were wanting to move toward this option because it limited the need to do any redistricting. It was closest to the status quo that they have right now. There was no additional transportation cost. They wouldn't have to make changes to their curriculum integration. They would be maintaining the same neighborhood schools. The parental involvement would not be impacted, and there'd be less disruption for the students due to construction. Since then, we have started to get together with our Facilities Master Plan 2 working group, which is Laurie, Steve Foster, our Facilities Director, Paul Hutchins, who is our Building Commissioner, Jim Maley, the Assistant Superintendent of Schools, Lynn Savage, the Finance Director, and Jim Stanford, our DPW Director, as well as the Mount Vernon Group, who is our consultant for Facilities Master Plan 2. Mount Vernon Group has just recently, Thursday or Friday, gotten us updated budget numbers for the projects, and now we are working internally on a financing plan, or 7 or 8 different financing plans, to see how the numbers work. And basically what that involves is taking debt that's falling off the levy, taking estimated new growth, extrapolating out what inflation would cost, figuring out what the operating costs of the buildings are for both building needs as well as for personnel to be within those buildings, and creating a plan out of all of that. So we've been finding a lot of fun with worksheets and spreadsheets the last few days. We had another meeting this morning, and we're continuing to meet on that. Starting next week, the schools are going to be having public forums where they're going to be talking about the needs, what the issues are in each of the buildings, what the school committee's recommendation is. They're Atkinson, October 18th at 6, Franklin, October 19th at 6, Kittredge, October 25th at 6, the middle school, October 26th at 6, the senior center, November 4th at 1, town hall at your meeting on November 8th, and the youth center on December 1st, 2021 at 7 p.m. There's been a little bit of a change to how we have been processing through our timeline, and what we had hoped for was that we would have really good cost estimation and timelines done prior to going into these forums. However, we had the good news that the MSBA is coming to do a site visit at the Kittredge School, which is really exciting because that means that we've got to kind of the first step, and it's one of the first times we've done that. And so that has required us to create several different funding mechanisms, as if we're getting MSBA funding, if we're not getting MSBA funding. It's a good problem to have, but you know, it's added an extra complication. So the cost estimation and timeline is taking a little bit longer than we anticipated. So Facilities Master Plan 2 committee will continue to work on that. I anticipate we'll also soon have a school building commission because an MSBA project would require that, of course. Once we finish all of that, we'll start doing more public education and support initiatives around the January timeframe when the capital plan is done, when we'll really start talking about funding, adoption of the plan, what the plan looks like, what the impact is to taxpayers, and we're figuring kind of all of that out now, today, really. We'll start working on public forums for that as well. As you know, Sarah Brush has now come on for 30 hours and is here to help us with not just COVID messaging, but also messaging on this. So she'll be starting a website for Facilities Master Plan 2, which we're really excited about. And just so everyone understands a little bit about what we're going to be doing at this town meeting, because, you know, what's happening now, we'll be, of course, adopting Facilities Master Plan 2, but we'll be doing the design of whatever the first project is. So we will have an appropriation from some funding source, most likely free cash, to do the design of the first project. And then the subsequent town meetings, there'll be additional appropriations, of course. So at the end of the day, we'll have a really full project. It will include all the escalation. It will include all of the needs that go along with every building, the fixtures, the technology, electricity, heat, literally everything, and will give us a really good idea of what the costs are. We've been working hard on that, and I'm really thankful to the schools for doing their due diligence and our team internally for turning this around so quickly. So lots of stuff going on with that, and it's exciting.
So one thing I mean, obviously that's awesome, and I can imagine it. Well, two things really come to mind. One is that when you're going through a lot of variations of proposals, sometimes it's helpful for people to understand what wasn't chosen or what some of the other paths are. I think some of it was in this proposal, but I think that's a good path to have because people, you know, kind of catch up sometimes a little further down the line. So I would ask that there be some of that resident in it. The other thing is that, and this is more really to the school committee and the superintendent in general, but you know, yes, this is a facilities master plan, but it's all about what's being offered in the buildings. And so I think wherever possible, that can be integrated or highlighted or connected to the choices of the design and so forth. And that's kind of a big ask, because you're saying, you know, well, what do you get out of this? But I do think that's important, because it is a value proposition. I mean, yeah, we're buying more building, but what's going to happen within those buildings? What's the educational piece? And that can oftentimes get disconnected, and people get so focused on the numbers and, you know, all that. So I guess I would hope that stays connected to it. I don't know if others you feel the same way, but I think that would be good.
Right? There's a story behind each of these buildings, and what's the story? Yeah.
Not having it lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
I appreciate that very much.
I think we have to make sure that we remember the why, right? Like, why are we doing this?
Absolutely.
Because it's a lot of money. We're asking our residents with kids and without kids, and of course the fire station and the youth center are there too. So I think that everybody needs to know why. At the end of the day, we want to do this.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So these public meetings are happening. Is that an opportunity for input? Will there be changes to these plans, like on some level, or?
So I guess two things. I know that there's been a lot of input so far. I don't want to minimize the input that they've already done at all.
Absolutely, but I think it's that delayed reaction.
Yeah, of course. But I also want to be really clear that all we're really getting from Facilities Master Plan 2 is a schematic, right? It's not a design of any building, because to design a building costs about 10% of the construction costs, right? So, I just had this conversation with Chief Ware, when we were talking about the building needs, and, he was saying, how do I figure out what the operational needs are if I don't know what the actual building looks like? And I'm like, I know, right? But we won't know that until we spend the $400,000 to actually design your building. And when we go through that design process, right, particularly with school buildings, the School Building Commission has public meetings that are posted, right? And that during those public meetings, then they create their bid documents when the construction documents are reviewed. And so those are all chances for there to be changes, right? I mean, if you think about right now, we're in the middle of just starting the senior center. And at the last meeting we had with the construction team, we were talking about moving a door, right? Like, so things are always in flux until it's built, just like when you build a home, right? So I think one of the great things about the school building process, and Laurie and I were talking about this earlier today, there's this great class that they have through the state that's called to build the building, right? And it's all about building a school building. And it talks about kind of this iterative process, how this, you get through this feasibility part first, right? That's all we're really doing right now. It's just feasibility, right? And then you move on to your design process, and that's when you're actually designing the building and bringing those ideas to life. So we're really kind of in step 1, and the design is really step 2, because we're really just doing feasibility and needs right now. So design, there'll be a lot more input for design.
And so the plan is the plan. There's not, they have voted on their plan.
And recommended it to us to bring forward. Now, at the end of the day, are there changes? Maybe. We have to deal with the finances of it, right? And so we have to determine whether or not it's feasible and realistic. And that's a huge part of what we're doing too. Yeah. But I will say that we are breaking it down so granularly that we're actually able to share what the impact to the average taxpayer will be on their bill for each aspect of the project. Like,
That's great.
we've
Thank
studied
you.
it out like that.
Thank you for doing that, yeah. It's very important.
So I think that will be helpful, and it will give people an idea of, well, how does this impact me at home, right? So it's exciting. We're excited about it. We haven't done a facilities master plan since 2012, right? We're learning from the one we did last time and from other projects that we've worked on. So, we think we're going to have a really good product in the end.
Great, thank you.
The website, I think, is a big key. I mean, that was something, when we did the first facilities master plan, to be able to just point people to the website so they could get the updates on the projects and understand how they were being funded, and all of that information was just out there and available. And, because people were asking, how can we afford to do all this? Well, go here and you'll see it all. And, and then the design and build each year, we used to go to a town meeting, we'd ask for the money to do the designs, and then the next year we'd go back for the build money. And that seemed to work out very well because it was very transparent and people understood it and they knew, what was to expect.
Yeah,
So,
the schools have a website right now. If you go to their site and you click on school capacity, you can see everything they've done so far, which is great. So we're just going to build off of theirs, which is fabulous, but include, everything we do moving forward. One of the things I think that we've been talking about a lot internally is that last time, Laurie, was it $25 million worth of projects? Facilities Master Plan 1 was, maybe a fourth, a third, a fifth of what we're doing right now. Yes, so, but, school buildings are much more expensive, right? And so I just, I want people to be really realistic about the timeline. And that's something that we've been talking about internally, that, this may not be a design, build, design, build, design, build. It may have to be a, design, build, wait, design, build. It's going to take more like 15 years than 5, if we want to do it in a way that's sustainable for taxpayers. So, but we're building that all out, and it's going to be exciting to be able to present it to you.
And that's important too. I mean, the design build is nice, but making it sustainable and affordable is important too. More important, actually.
Yeah. So. Right, we want to be least impactful we can. So we'll be able to bring that all forward, and I think the public will appreciate seeing it broken down in a way that everyone can understand. So that's the update on that, unless there's any other questions. Okay. And then we're going to have Halloween. It's going to be on Halloween. We're very excited. It's a Sunday this year. Right, and there's going to be no rain. That's what I've been told. So that's exciting, and it's going to be from 5 to 7 as the recommended hours from the chief. And we will have supplemental patrols, and we're looking forward to a nice, normal Halloween night. Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Will it be dark?
Yeah.
It's the week after.
September. Yeah. I think it will be dark though. I mean, it gets dark pretty early now.
Dark.
Which, that's fun for the kids.
Yeah.
I have to say, that's one of the things you love about it when you're a kid, so.
It does. It gets dark early. And then that's
Starting
all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Are there any selectmen updates or comments?
I have a bunch of things I want to throw out there, but I'll be very quick. Cleanup Day, Lake Cleanup Day, Saturday, October 16th from 9:30 to 11:30. There's a window decorating contest going on through the North Andover Merchants Association right now. So all the details are on their website. The decorating will happen on October 23rd between 9 and 4. The Artisan Market is coming up October 17th from 10 to 3. And October 28th, there is a live public hearing about the North Andover 114 corridor improvements. That's it.
I think you covered it all.
Yeah. All good?
Anyone else?
I know I bring this up every week, but just so people know that the banners are going, and they're going relatively quickly. One thing that was not put in the flyer because we didn't know if we could do it or if we could get, if I could get them at a price that we could make it all work. But, because some people have called to ask, because it wasn't in the flyer, but again, that was on purpose until we had better information. There will be small wreaths hung from the bottom of the banner or even maybe nailed to the telephone poles on Main Street that will add to the festivities of the holiday season. So for those who've bought wreaths for years and years, the banner will include with the price a small wreath for the holidays. So get them in though, because I'm telling you, I'm getting stacks every day. And we just number them as they come in so that we do it as fairly as we can.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? No? All right, so our next meeting is October 25th, and I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Roll call vote.
Janice Phillips, aye.
Chris Nobley, aye.
Rosemary Smedili, aye.
Richard Valencourt, aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you guys so much. It's a
Take
little hard
care.
doing remote, but
Be well. See
I
you
think
here
we-
in 2 weeks, I hope.